If you've never worked in a small-town library, let me tell you something. People think it's quiet, peaceful, almost sacred. And it is until the politics starts. Not national politics, not the kind that gets people yelling on TV. No, in talking about small, petty, territorial power games played by people who treat a library card like a royal decree. I became head archivist of the Maple Hollow Public Library when I was 28. It was a dream job for me. The smell of old pages, the creak of heavy drawers, the quiet shuffle of readers who felt like ghosts drifting between rows of forgotten stories. It all felt like home. I loved building exhibits, restoring old manuscripts, and giving guided tours to school kids who looked like they were discovering treasure. I thought I had found the perfect place to spend the next decade of my life. Then Eleanor Vorse arrived. She was appointed as our new library director by the town council, which no one saw coming. Eleanor was in her mid-40s, sharp as a wolf in a skirt suit, and carried herself like she was taking command of a military battalion, rather than a team of 5 overworked bibliophiles. She introduced herself with a smile that felt polished, like something she practiced in the mirror. Good leadership requires restructuring, she said on her first day. I should have run then. Eleanor wasn't interested in books. She was interested in control. Within 2 weeks, she had replaced our reference desk design with a modern monstrosity, instituted mandatory time audits for each task, and scheduled daily meetings where she expected us to praise her new ideas. She didn't just want efficiency, she wanted devotion. But the worst part was her obsession with the restricted archives. The archives weren't some mysterious forbidden chamber, despite the dramatic name. They were just a climate-controlled basement where we kept valuable local documents, century-old maps, handwritten diaries of early settlers, fragile newspapers from the 1800s. They were my responsibility, my sanctuary. Eleanor wanted them. You'll be taking over archival management, she announced one morning during our staff meeting, sipping tea like it was champagne. I blinked. That's not really standard. I've been trained, she cut me off. And you'll train me. Starting today. The others stared at the table. They knew better than to challenge her. Eleanor had already fired one staff member for insubordination, because she disagreed with a scheduling change. So I complied. I showed her the collections, the preservation equipment, the restoration logs. She nodded along but didn't seem to understand or care about any of it. She kept glancing at a particular locked cabinet in the far corner, one containing our rarest documents, the Maple Hollow Founders Ledger. It wasn't valuable in the monetary sense, but historically, it was our crown jewel, a handwritten account from the town's earliest days, filled with signatures, transactions, land disputes, and stories that never made it into the official records. Why is this locked? She asked. To protect it from humidity and light damage, I replied. Get me the key. I hesitated. Only the director and head archivist can authorize and supervise inspection. She smiled. And in the director. Reluctantly, I unlocked it. But she didn't inspect it. She didn't even glance at its contents. She simply closed the lid and said, "Good. That will do." My stomach tightened. Something was off. Over the next 2 months, Eleanor made my life a quiet hell. She increased my workload while stripping away my authority. She forgot to include me in emails, then reprimanded me for missing information. She scheduled my shifts during events she knew I'd prepared, but then assigned someone else to run them. She wanted me gone. I just didn't know why. I finally discovered the truth during a late-night storm. A pipe burst in the basement ceiling, right above the archives. I rushed in alone, panicking, grabbing buckets and plastic sheeting. Water dripped dangerously close to our collections. I worked 4 hours trying to save what I could. That's when I noticed it. The locked cabinet containing the Founders Ledger was slightly ajar. My heart hammered. I grabbed a flashlight and pulled open the lid. The ledger was gone. In its place was a thick manila folder filled with property deeds, recent ones, and every single one had Eleanor Vorse's name buried somewhere in the fine print. She wasn't interested in history. She was covering it up. I spent the next 3 days piecing things together. The founder's ledger contained original land claims that contradicted modern property lines. If made public, several of the town's wealthiest families, including a council member who had hired Eleanor, would be forced into legal disputes. Their land wasn't legally theirs. Eleanor was burying evidence to protect them, and ensuring her job security in the process. Then I found the contract, filed in a drawer she assumed I wouldn't open. A redevelopment agreement. Maple Hollow Public Library would be modernized into a private cultural center funded by those same families. And the archives, digitized and streamlined, which was just code for destroyed. My job wasn't the target. The library itself was. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, soaked with fear and fury, I realized something. Eleanor wanted to erase the town's history, but she forgot one thing about librarians. We don't let stories die. She took something precious from me. She thought she could reshape the truth. So I decided to write a new chapter. One where Eleanor Voss would regret ever stepping foot in my library. And that was the night I began planning my revenge. Revenge is like restoring an ancient manuscript. Slow, meticulous, and requiring absolute precision. One wrong move, and the whole thing crumbles. I spent the next week pretending everything was normal at work, but inside, I was collecting information with the focus of a hunter tracking a wounded animal through the woods. Eleanor believed she had complete control of the archives. She didn't know I had systems in place. She had never even noticed tiny safeguards ID installed. Long before she arrived. Archival paranoia, a colleague once joked. But paranoia turns into prophecy when the wrong person takes over. The first thing I checked was the temperature logs. The old monitoring system had a glitch. It kept backup records into locations. One was the public interface Eleanor had access to. The second was a hidden backup directory tied to my login one I never told anyone about. And there it was. At 11:42 p.m., 2 days before the storm, someone entered the archives using the director's access card. 40 minutes inside, the temperature sensor spiked twice, which only happened when the cabinet was opened. The ledger wasn't lost. It was stolen, and I could prove it. But evidence wasn't enough. Eleanor was smart, manipulative, a master of political spin. Bringing accusations without an airtight case would get me fired immediately, maybe even blacklisted from any library in the region. And worst of all, she still had the ledger. Without it, I couldn't expose her motives. So I needed a plan that would force her hand. The opportunity came unexpectedly from a place I'd almost forgotten about. The Historical Preservation Society of Maple Hollow, a group of retirees, hobby genealogists, and over-caffeinated history nerds who wore vests covered with pins and treated local law like national treasure. They adored me. They hated Eleanor. The society's president, a 72-year-old woman named Harriet McLennan, came storming into the library one morning with a ferocity I'd only ever seen. When someone suggested replacing the wooden reading tables with plastic ones. "Where is the ledger?" she demanded. I blinked. "What do you mean?" Eleanor cancelled the annual Founders Exhibition. Said the ledger is undergoing private administrative review. Harriet's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "She's hiding something." I couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. But I could give her kindling for a much bigger fire. "Harriet," I said softly, "what if I told you the archives aren't being managed properly, and that something in the ledger might be deliberately misrepresented?" Her eyes widened, exactly as I expected. The society moved faster than I thought a group of retirees armed with tote bags could. By the next afternoon, they'd filed a formal request to inspect the ledger under state archival regulations. Regulations Eleanor couldn't deny without raising suspicion. She tried anyway. Due to recent water damage, the ledger cannot be retrieved at this time. She wrote in her official statement. That was a mistake, because the water damage happened after she stole the ledger, and I had the logs to prove she'd removed it beforehand. A small inconsistency, but enough to make the society furious. They demanded accountability. They demanded transparency. And under that pressure, Eleanor began to crack. She called me into her office one morning. Her smile stretched so tight it looked painful. "A little bird told me," she said, "that you've been stirring worries among the local historians." "I've done no such thing," I replied truthfully. "But they're worried. They just want to see the ledger." She tapped her pen on the desk. "The ledger is safe. Then why not show them?" Her eyes narrowed. Predator eyes. Calculating. "I think," she said carefully, "your loyalties are becoming misaligned." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. That night, I knew I had to move quickly. There was only one person who might know where Eleanor hid the ledger. A young assistant she hired named Jonah. 22, jumpy, always carrying folders twice his weight. He wasn't malicious, just scared of losing his job. He also didn't realize that whispering in the archives echoes. I overheard him and Eleanor talking to evenings prior while I was reshelving books upstairs. Eleanor's voice had been clipped. "The cabinet at the Voss estate. Until the council finalizes funding." That was all I needed. The next morning I visited the estate under the guise of dropping off documents for Eleanor. Jonah answered the door. His eyes widened when he saw me. Guilty people always react like that. "I just need to leave something for Miss Voss," I said casually. He hesitated. "She's not home." "Perfect," I smiled, stepping forward. "Then I'll give it to you." Jonah was easy to crack. I didn't threaten him. I didn't bribe him. I simply told him the truth. "If the ledger is destroyed, you will be the one blamed." His face went pale. Within minutes, he confessed that the ledger was hidden in a locked cedar trunk in the estate's library. He even gave me the exact location. I waited until he left for lunch. Then I entered the estate again, not breaking in, just walking through the unlocked side door used by staff. The trunk was exactly where he said, and inside, wrapped in linen, was the founder's ledger. I didn't steal it. I didn't need to. Photographing the entire thing was enough. Every page, every signature, every line showing the truth Eleanor tried to bury. By the time I left, I had what I needed. But the revenge wasn't complete yet. Exposing her quietly would only let her worm away, claiming misunderstanding or clerical errors. I wanted something public, irreversible, something she could never wiggle out of. The perfect opportunity arrived 2 days later. The town council's budget hearing. Eleanor would be presenting her library modernization plan with all her charm and lies. The council members, many complicit in her scheme, were prepared to nod along, but they didn't know I'd submitted my own presentation. As a citizen, as an archivist, as the keeper of the town's truth, Harriet and the Preservation Society backed me. The local newspaper agreed to attend. The room would be packed, and Eleanor had no idea what was coming. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to obliterate her image in the very place she thought she owned. Because librarians don't start fights, but we finish them. If you've never walked into a town council hearing carrying the truth like a loaded weapon, let me tell you, it doesn't feel heroic. It feels like stepping into a storm naked, hoping the lightning strikes exactly where you need it. I arrived at the Maple Hollow Municipal Building 20 minutes early, clutching a folder filled with printed evidence and a drive containing the digital scans of the founder's ledger. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from anticipation. Harriet and the entire Historical Preservation Society were already there, occupying the front row like a brigade of polite elderly soldiers ready for war. When they saw me, they practically radiated hope. I nodded at them, trying to mask my anxiety. This had to be perfect. One misstep, and Eleanor would spin the narrative, twist the facts, and bury the truth deeper than the ledger ever was. The room filled slowly. Council members, concerned citizens, a local journalist adjusting his camera, and representatives from several families whose property lines would be affected by my evidence. The air hummed with tension, like everyone sensed something explosive was about to happen. Then Eleanor walked in. Perfect suit, perfect hair, Perfect smile. She moved to the podium like she owned the place because, in her mind, she did. She even gave me a small nod of false sympathy, like she was indulging a lost puppy. That tiny gesture, that arrogant flicker of condescension, solidified every reason I had for being there. The hearing began with routine reports, budgets, proposals, infrastructure updates. My mind barely registered them. My heart pounded in a steady, pulsing chant, wait, wait. Not yet. Finally, the council chair cleared her throat. Next on the agenda, Director Eleanor Voss will present the Maple Hollow Public Library Modernization Project. Eleanor approached the microphone, radiating confidence. Slides appeared behind her. Glossy, soulless mock-ups of a sanitized modern library, glass walls, touchscreen kiosks, empty shelves, and an interactive digital archive that made me want to vomit. She spoke with polished enthusiasm. Our library is outdated, inefficient, burdened with fragile, irrelevant documents that no longer serve our community. With the council's support, I intend to transition Maple Hollow Public Library into a state-of-the-art cultural center, digitally streamlined, intellectually accessible, and free from unnecessary historical clutter. She said clutter as if referring to trash, and every archivist bone in my body caught fire. Council members nodded approvingly. Citizens murmured. The journalists scribbled notes. Eleanor smiled, believing she had already won. And then, the chair looked to me. Mr. Harris, we understand you requested to present an opposing viewpoint. Opposing viewpoint. If only they knew. I stood, feeling an electric surge under my skin. I carried my folder to the podium, placed the USB drive gently on its surface, and looked out at the crowd. Thank you for allowing me to speak, I said, steadying my voice. In here today not to oppose modernization, but to oppose something far more dangerous. The erasure of our town's history. Eleanor's smile faltered, just slightly, but I saw it. I clicked to my first slide, a scanned page from the ledger. Gasps rippled through the room. This, I said, is the original Maple Hollow Founders Ledger, dated 1843. It contains land agreements, property boundaries, and settlement transactions that form the legal foundation of our town. Documents that were locked and preserved for decades until recently. I clicked again, and again. Each slide showed something undeniable. Missing pages, tampered catalog records, temperature logs proving access before the storm, metadata from Eleanor's alterations, location details of the hidden cedar trunk, property deeds tied to the families funding the redevelopment project. Whispers surged into murmurs, murmurs into outrage. Eleanor stepped forward. This is absurd. These files are outdated, irrelevant. Mr. Harris stole. I cut her off by clicking to the final slide. A time-stamped photo of the ledger in her private estate. The room exploded. The council chair slammed her gavel. Order! Order! Eleanor's face drained of color. Her mask cracked entirely as she stuttered. I can explain. But there was no explanation that could save her now. The evidence was public, documented, recorded by the journalist's camera. The chair spoke with icy authority. Director Voss, in light of this evidence, you are hereby suspended pending a full investigation. Security will escort you out. Security approached. Eleanor backed away, shaking her head. This town needs me. You don't understand, this history would ruin everything. That, I said quietly into the microphone, was never your decision to make. She lunged toward me, maybe to grab the ledger photos, maybe to claw at her last shred of power, but security intercepted her. They guided her toward the exit as she hurled accusations, threats, frantic promises. And then she was gone. The door closed behind her, and the room exhaled collectively. The council postponed the redevelopment vote indefinitely. The Preservation Society cheered. The journalist approached me for an interview. Citizens shook my hand, thanking me for saving the town's soul, which felt dramatic but honestly a little deserved. But the moment that struck me the most was when Harriet embraced me and whispered, "The library chose the right guardian." In the days that followed, Eleanor's misconduct dominated local headlines. The investigation uncovered more tampered documents, private deals, evidence of manipulation. The ledger was returned to the archives with reinforced security protocols. The modernization project was scrapped, and the council offered me something I didn't expect: the position of interim library director. I accepted, not out of pride, but out of responsibility, because the library wasn't just my workplace, it was my legacy, my refuge, my weapon, my story. And though Eleanor tried to rewrite the past, she forgot the most important rule: librarians always keep receipts.